Emiko's perspective. And, without further ado, I shall hand you off to the coordinator of this expedition, Emiko Smiles Miyazaki, says Mudaliar, gesturing to me. I step to the podium flanked by Fran to my left. I am the last to speak. We've already heard intelligence agents briefing us on currently available information about the Revenkists, Mudaliar giving an impassioned speech on the significance of our mission, and now it's my turn. Comparatively, my task is rather mundane and functional. I just have to give basic instructions. However, I decide to start by saying, thank you all for coming. You have heard my colleagues tell you about the recent attempt on my life, and the life of Representative Mudaliar here. So I would like to start by saying that, if any of you do not wish to proceed on this voyage, you may walk away now. The ODR will not seek to punish you in any way for valuing your own safety. I pause here and look around for anyone making to leave. As anxiety-inducing as it is to make this offer, it is the right thing to do. The contracts they have all signed have punitive breach clauses. I would hate for any of them to feel forced onto this expedition because they didn't realize that those clauses wouldn't be enforced under these circumstances. Mercifully, no one makes to go. Good, then I shall start on the introductions. I smile. As Mr. Mudaliar said, I am Emiko Smiles Miyazaki, and I am the coordinator of this expedition. This, I gesture to Fran, is my bodyguard, Fran Gimli Hunter. To my right you can see Tequal, 27th daughter of HFY Peak, the owner and captain of the Bright Plume, the vessel that shall be conveying us to AG 107-902-63B. Beside her are CSS Victor Carlos Taylor, ASO Toon Elf. I smile as I remember the girl's request for how to introduce her, soon to become ASO Toon Elf Taylor, and SO Brunhilde Samus Aran. The Bright Plume security team, at the back there. I gesture to the permanently sneering Raquali woman on a species-specific perch with her husband. Every head turns to her. She seems momentarily surprised by being the first to be introduced after those on the stage. It only takes her a moment to adopt a slight smirk, letting me know exactly what she's thinking. Yes, I am that important. You will see Wakrak, 15th daughter of HFY Peak, and her lifemate Akrat. She is the expedition's compliance officer, so everyone be on your best behavior around her. There's a slight titter, and the woman resumes her sneer. In the front row here, I gesture to the tall, slender, dark-skinned woman. You will see Lieutenant Zong Longstride Loper, our military liaison and advisor. She stands and turns, holding up her hand in greeting and letting all see her face. Over there, you will see Dr. Nyaxiogi Hook Zumberi, and beside her, Dr. Felicity Scowls Mink. I think about saying soon to become Felicity Scowls Zumberi, but decide against it as she made no such request. Dr. Zumberi and Dr. Mink are our expedition's conservation consultants. It bears mentioning that Dr. Zumberi's brother, sat beside Dr. Mink, is also called Dr. Zumberi and is also employed on the ship, though independently and not as an ODR contractor. Over there, I gesture to the Vietnamese and Navajo gentlemen. You'll see Dr. Kwon Hart Fan and Dr. Neol Healer Hatathili, our humanitarian observers. Beside Dr. Fran is our press liaison, Sue Nose. The Suigu shape shifts to gain 60 centimeters or so of height, and twists her gelatinous body around, with a broad grin on her face. Just there, I indicate the large amphibian man, is our technologies officer, Baorbo. There, I gesture to the diminutive Russian, who stands up on top of her chair to get the height necessary to make herself visible. You can see Dr. Olga Data Semyonova Petrikov,
our data analyst. Over there, I gesture to the plump, half Denisovan woman, is Dr. J. Peach Stone, our sociologist. Beside her is Dimentia Eagle Njognet, our tracker and wilderness survival expert. Over there, I gesture to the UTCIS agents. You'll see Agent Leon Kennedy Byrne and Agent Ziva Whisper Pereira, our intelligence officers. Next to Agent Byrne, I gesture to the little Cyclopean woman, is our statistician, Enas. At the front here, you will see Master Shi Dao Yuan, our health and fitness instructor. I would like to take this opportunity to publicly and personally thank Master Wan for his effective resolution of the other night's assassination attempt, I say warmly. The man smiles and waves a hand as if to say it was nothing at all, really, in spite of the significant injuries and blood loss he sustained. Just there, I indicate the pale-skinned, statuesque Spelvok woman and her Eurasian American husband, Doctors Fisher, Alkinad Dimitriescu, and Mark King of the Squirrels. They provide onboard therapy and counseling sessions, and I encourage any who feel they would benefit to make use of their services. Apologies in advance for your packed schedules, doctors, I quip. The fisherman shakes his fist at me in mock frustration, as his wife does a hissing giggle through her sharp teeth. I turn to indicate the blonde New Australian. That gentleman there is Mr. Steve Taipan Kelly, our consultant on natural toxins and animal handling. He stands and grins around, genially. There is Dr. Yasmin Gold-Tongue Sultani, our linguist. Here, I signal the large brown-furred Ursus sapiens, is Dr. Bjorn Mimir Tupuson, our historiographer, and beside him, I indicate the Terran woman with the most heavily modded appearance of anyone I've ever known personally, Dr. Lilith Unicorn Morningstar, and I gesture to the meter-and-a-half tall man who looks uncannily like a humanoid owl, Strick, our folklorist and archaeologist, respectively. Over there, I motion to the slender, pale blue-skinned, Qualftily woman, is Weavel, our political analyst, and beside her, I motion to the bulky, four-armed, crimson-skinned man, who, with his mouth shut, has a deceptively avian-looking snout. When he opens his mouth, you're able to see that what looks like his beak, when it's hidden in his lips, is actually a single long conial tusk, jutting from his bottom jaw, and adapted to piercing the shells of the crab-like creatures that are his people's main food source on their cradle world, Karg, is our architectural consultant, Gamoriwoth. I'm afraid that will have to conclude our introductions of those already aboard. Sincere apologies if your name was left out. There just isn't time to introduce everyone of the non-ODR crew. We will be here all night. It feels odd specifically leaving out Cookie, Mouse, and Hazuka, and only giving Mage a partial introduction, but if I introduce them, then there's really no excuse for not introducing the entire crew. Only the ODR contractors, captain, and security team. Everyone else will have to meet and introduce themselves on their own time. Now, on to introducing the new arrivals. Miss Marala? I beckon the mermaid to the stage invitingly. She hovers up the steps, seeming to have already navigated to the gradient setting and adjusted it to make her ascent smoother. She begins signing to the room, her translation giving the effect of a raised voice to her gestures, exaggerated for greater visibility. It is lovely to meet all of you. I am Marala, and I am an Oseol. I shall be the oceanographer on this expedition. I hope you will keep me safe. She wobbles her head, which layers a humorous tone over the last sentence. She signs, "Thank you." She hovers to one side to make room for the next crew member. Short and sweet, I smile. Thank you, Marala. Skunzeth, could I ask you to come to the stage and introduce yourself? The rough welder who stands, and begins making her way up the central aisle between seats, is, more than any other sapient I've ever laid eyes on, the stuff of absolute nightmares. Her entire body is encased in glossy chitin plates, in dark brown, with vivid scarlet and pale beige accents. Behind her trails around 5 meters of what isn't quite accurate to call a tail. It's lined with dozens of short, chitinous legs that keep it suspended from the ground, making it a hind body segment. However, much of it looks like a long, thick tail. Her forebody consists of 6 long limbs, 4 of which are currently being held nervously in front of her chest, 2 of which she is stood upright on, though she is capable of moving on all 6 in a sprint. The 12 fingers of her 4 hands each have 1 fewer joints than a human's, the 4 thumbs each being a single claw with only a knuckle joint. The 2 fingers they each oppose having 1 joint in the middle in addition to their knuckles. The 2 claws on each of her feet, like her thumbs, have only a single knuckle joint. Her head, more than anything else about her, resembles a centipede's, with 2 compound eyes, 3 sets of 2 mandibles, and 2 long sensory antennae, whisking this way and that. The most instinctively disturbing thing about this woman, however, is not her appearance, nor the clicking and clacking of her chitin on the polished wood of the gymnasium's floor. It's something I know about her. This is not her body. In fact, what I'm looking at isn't even the body of a sapient creature. Or it is, in the same way as the clothes I'm wearing are the clothes of a sapient creature. The actual body of the woman piloting a livestock animal, specifically bred as ideal host to the stage, is around the size of my fist and located at the base of its skull, surgically implanted there at its birth. According to rumor, there were dark science attempts made to implant her species into the bodies of humans during the war. Though again, according to rumor, even devoid of a cerebellum, the human body's immune system was simply too potent to allow for any operational value to calm most such twisted experiments. Immunosuppression simply meant succumbing to human pathogens instead of our white blood cells. It's chilling to think, in a reality just a little to the left of our own, I might have had to fight against human, meat puppet corpses, piloted around the battlefield by a sapient parasite species. Then again, I think, as I watch her climb the stage, I can't let my instinctive revulsion for how she looks or how her species' life cycle works prejudice me against her. She can't help what she is any more than I can help being a death welder, and, more importantly, neither of us should have to. She's not hurting anyone, unless you count the animal whose lobotomized body she's claimed. That's not really any different ethically to people eating meat not grown in a lab, though it's not as if it's suffering, I really hope. Nope, I need to stop thinking about it and just treat her the same way I would treat any other sapient. Honestly, Emiko, this is precisely the kind of prejudice that the ODR exists to mitigate. You can't let squeamishness get in the way of respect. The Vagunts woman, in the body of a hearse centipede, mounts the stage and, in contrast to her stomach-churning appearance, excitedly introduces herself, with the translated tone of a nervous, squeaky-voiced girl, as she says, "Hello, my name is Shrunks, and I am the anatomist. I am a colleague of Ty's at Citadel University of the Biological Sciences." She gestures to the yet-to-be-introduced androgynous human at the back of the room, where she was sitting. "But, of course, you haven't met them yet, have you?" She laughs nervously. I'm hoping to learn a lot about the new species and help with things like developing nerve jacking that will allow translators to work for them, as well as, perhaps seeing about possible medical advances that might be possible because of them, and possibly, no, that's too many possibles. Anyway, I look forward to working with all of you, and if you ever either hear me or Ty shouting, "It's alive!" don't worry about it. That was an admirable attempt at diffusing her poor introduction speech with humour. It didn't land well. My guess is that most others in the audience are as, or more, put off by the woman's appearance than I am. Kindly, I smile. Thank you, Miss Zrmsh. We very much look forward to working with you as well. Could I ask Ty Lamar to come up and introduce himself? The light-haired French person at the back of the room stands and begins to make their way up to the stage. Despite their almost teenaged appearance, they are about to become the oldest Terran aboard the Bright Plume, at 125. They are short and slender with fair skin, flaxen-coloured hair, and pale blue eyes. Everything about their face and body is perfectly epicene. With grace and confidence not demonstrated by their Vukun's colleague, Thais introduces himself. Yes, hello, I am Thais. As my friend Skunzi has let you know, we two are colleagues at a university here in Citadel, where we collaborate quite closely. I am a geneticist and evolutionary scientist, and quite an accomplished one at that. Where no one can tell you better than she what anatomical features an organism possesses, no one can tell you better than I why it possesses them. Together with her, I hope to be able to build a comprehensive natural history of this new species and its ecology. I thank you all for enabling us to do that. Thais steps aside. Their demeanor is slightly arrogant, but somehow charming in spite of that. All right then, thank you, Mix Lamarck. Next, Mr. Ru-u-u-uru, I say, croaking a sound like a groaning tree branch and probably butchering the pronunciation. I won't ask you to come onto the stage. Please stay where you are and introduce yourself. I smile kindly at the impractically gargantuan man. Easily 9 meters tall, with a body of gnarled wood and a language of deep, slow creaks, reminiscent of unsped-up whale song. The massive Grontian has gravitic compensator devices festooning his body, even in this galactic standard gravity. Obviously, no private room on the ship is capable of accommodating him. Fortunately, though, he has assured us that being allowed an allotment of space in hydroponics, along with plenty of clean fresh water, is all he needs. His species don't get bored easily, and don't tend to move unless they have somewhere they need to go, so he says he'll happily curl up under the lights and not go crawling about the corridors. His body plan is more or less humanoid, with 2 long legs over which is a trunk, on the sides of which are 2 long arms and over which is a head. Fine manipulation is not performed by his stiff, woody hands, instead being done by prehensile vine tendrils that sprout from his body here and there. His chest, back, shoulders, arms, and head are covered in thick foliage, having the effect of making him look like a human with a very thick coat of body hair. I say he, but in actuality his species do not divide themselves by gender, despite being sexual. Having no sexual dimorphism, aside from the fact that one sex produces pollen and the other seeds, and no burden of care to their offspring, Grontians don't really have any concept of themselves as male or female, and instead divide themselves by age. Roughly translated, their 5 ages are sprout, sapling, young growth, mature growth, and old growth. They're only perambulatory and sentient for the first 4 of those stages, old growth trees becoming rooted to the spot, and slowly losing their cognitions. Unlike most other species, they have shrugged off all attempts to extend their lifespan, tending to see the transition to old growth as something sacred and honourable, and not at all with the horror a human would feel about being told they will slowly lose the ability to move, then speak, then think. Not really having a way to refer to his species' age archetypes in any language I speak, I resolved to just calling him a him, and letting translators do what they want with that. Based on his size, this mature growth man was probably already walking about the forests of Gront at the end of the Upper Paleolithic. This will probably be the last opportunity he gets to undertake a voyage like this, before he is compelled to find a sunny spot on Gront, or another paradise world somewhere, and slowly let his awareness fade away. In his deep, groaning language, he starts.
My name is Ru-oo-oo-oo,
creating an unearthly rumbling sound for his name that I'm definitely not capable of reproducing.
I am a botanist and dendrologist. I am glad to work with all of you.
Those 3 sentences, that I easily could have got through inside of 10 seconds in Japanese, took him nearly a minute to say. Thank you, Mr. Ru-oo-oo-oo, I say, not sure if he was actually done speaking, but preempting him continuing at that glacial pace with a smile. I apologize in advance if this is embarrassing, but your embassy has sent me a notification that I am required to relay to all present, if that's all right.
It's not,
he says. Oh, well, I start.
embarrassing.
He continues. I leave a pause before I say, okay, so...
It's the truth.
This difference in perceptual temporal resolution is mildly maddening, but I'm sure it's just as bad for him. I'm sure he just hears me squeaking along at 100 kilometers per hour and continually trying to interrupt him while he speaks. I leave a long enough pause that I'm certain the forest elemental is actually done, before I continue. Yes, so I am obliged to relate to everyone here, including the garden welders, that Mr. Ru-oo-oo-oo's cradle world is a Class 2 paradise world. Therefore, as sturdy and physically imposing as he might look to you, his body is extremely fragile and he is liable to be injured if proper restraint is not exercised whenever physical interaction with him is necessary. I repeat, everyone, deaf welder and garden welder alike, is to exercise extreme care whenever physical interaction with Mr. Ru-oo-oo-oo shall be necessary. I allow a rare stern tone to creep into my voice that hasn't been there since the primary way I was addressed was Commander, just to hammer home that I'm really not fucking around with this. That man's body density is so low that a human could punch clear through one of his legs without really even trying all that much. The mock punch you'd throw thinking you were making fun of the person, telling you to be gentle, would bury itself up to the wrist. As striking as the image of humans fighting an army of Ents might be, the reality is that the Gruntians had a species-wide exemption from service throughout the war, since even the GU recognized how little tactical value they held, being as delicate as they are. Satisfied that I have suitably impressed the point onto all present, I continue. Alright then, Dr. Albert Theseus Hardwick? A tired-looking brown-haired man in his 50s, looking like it's been a while since he last went through regen, and wearing a simple brown suit, stands, making his way to the stage. He looks like he, long ago, stopped caring about anything like looking cool or stylish, but, ironically, his exuded I don't care what you think of my ugly suit, my average height, my less than impressive physique, the lines on my face, or my eye bags attitude ends up working for him quite well. Hello, my name is Dr. Hardwick. I'll be the economic analyst for this expedition. It will be my job to assess the mechanisms of this new species economy, and ultimately what things of value they may be able to provide to galactic markets, and what things they may in turn value to trade for. I expect I will be cross-consulting with all of you at some point, as economics has a habit of rearing its ugly head in the places no one wants or expects it to. Thank you, he almost recites, with an exhausted demeanor that says, you may not like me or what I do, but I'm here and I don't particularly care one way or another. I wouldn't exactly say he was curt. To me, that implies some irritation. No, it was more like done, checked out, or going through the motions. Thank you, Dr. Hardwick, I smile, pretending I haven't noticed his not exactly polite manner. Could I ask Dr. Vabar Lam Tan to introduce himself next? The man that stands, despite his ovine appearance, is not an Ovis sapiens uplift. Despite his triple-barrel name and Terran academic title, he is no deaf welder, though his most recent stint of postgraduate study was undertaken on Earth. His species are called the Arbar, and resemble sheep with sky blue wool. He wears a long robe concealing his 4 legs. He makes it to the podium, his front legs making him have to stand a little further behind it than the others, and with the demeanor between a passionate professor about to deliver a lecture and a preacher about to deliver a sermon begins. I am Dr. Tan, and I am a professor of philosophy and theology. Now, I want to make clear that my task is not to convert this new species, or any of you, to any religion. Rather, I am here to understand what views on the metaphysical they hold, and why. I believe, in that regard, I shall have a lot to talk to Dr. Tupuson and Dr. Morningstar about. Understanding how environment shapes and is shaped by belief, on a hitherto uncontacted deaf world, I can imagine no finer use for my talents. I thank you all. He performs a little bow and stands with the others. Thank you, Dr. Tan, I smile. Would you introduce yourself? This woman looks like another aquatic. However, her species are mostly land-dwelling, to the point that, unlike Marala, no special accommodations needed to be made to her quarters. She just needs a dip in the pool, periodically. Her beak is not visible, being obscured by 6 prehensile tentacles. Instead of legs, she has 8 perambulatory tentacles beneath her torso. She has 2 tentacles that have adapted to function more like arms, with palms that have finger-like splits at the end, on the sides of her body. Music, she starts, is very important to my people, the E. I hope to document the musical stylings this species possesses as this expedition's ethnomusicologist. Another short and sweet one. I can see the way Yasmin perked up with excitement over this woman's language, with a single phoneme and 38 tones. I'm guessing the cephalopodan woman will be cornered and bullied into a linguistics session at some point. Thank you, E, I say, not sure whether my quavering tone on her name is correct, since she didn't actually say it. Commodore Yakut, could I... Oh, perfect, yes, come on up. The man, whose species doesn't closely resemble any Terran species or mythical creature I'm aware of, though maybe with notes of crocodile in his scaliness and hippopotamus in his thick build, stood up before I was done saying his name. He stands at the podium, his expression grim, and starts. Terrans, my name is Commodore Yakut of the Ulat people. I fought your kind in the war, and have spent more than 30 years regretting it. I'm not asking your forgiveness, but I'm hoping that my part in this expedition will be something like an atonement. My task will be the assessment of the naval defense of this planet from any outside threats. I hope to confer frequently with my opposite number from the Terran military here. He gestures on, in developing a rock-solid plan for how to keep these people safe while they are finding their feet. With that, the Navy man steps away from the stand, surprising me with the abruptness of the end of his speech. Recovering quickly, I return to the podium and say, finally, the stars of the show, could I ask Ambassador Lahamo Crane Yesh and Ambassador Nungong Ong to come to the stage? The pair who stand are a Tibetan woman from Gangsri Xar, who smiles with serenity that makes me absolutely certain her wedding dress must have been blue, and a tall Gonyeg man who's extremely traditionally handsome, if you can get over the blue skin, lack of a nose, and the far too large orange and veiny eyes that look as if they have no pupils. This is the pair who'll, if all goes well, remain on the planet after we return. With them, our crew complement is complete. Next stop, AG-107-902-63B.